You know, after having this channel for so long, I realized that I've never really talked about the MCU, which is strange considering that I've seen about every MCU film. Everyone except Spider-Man Far From Home, that's still on my list for some reason. The Marvel Cinematic Universe is a franchise that people love that I can't really say I'm a big fan of, despite the fact that I've watched a lot of them. To me, a lot of what I dislike about the Marvel Cinematic Universe is more geared towards what I dislike about modern Disney movies. The movies all feel generally safe and similar, often relying on quips and typical big CG battles at the end of every movie. And it's just something I think I've kind of grown tired of over time, and every time I want Marvel to try to do something new, something different, they say they're going to, and then they really don't. And Marvel movies are movies that are just full of potential and vast opportunities, but they always feel like they're being held back from greatness. It's a franchise so successful that it's too afraid to take any real risks at this point. I love movies and I love comics, so when these big blockbuster movies come out and everyone's talking about how great they are, I feel like I have to watch them. I mean, I have nothing to lose by watching them. And I'm not saying that all of them are bad. The vast majority of Marvel movies are actually pretty decent. There are some that I absolutely love, like the Guardians of the Galaxy movies, Iron Man, Winter Soldier, and Infinity War. Now, when it comes to comics, I think you could say that I have a DC bias. I'd say I read a lot more DC comics, and I think it's because I grew up with a lot of the DC cartoons that did an excellent job at capturing my interest in the universe. And to be perfectly honest, most Marvel cartoons kind of suck.
But when I know the time is right for me and you, I just flame on, and on, and on, flame on.
But that doesn't mean that I dislike Marvel. I am still a big Spider-Man fan, and the X-Men are pretty dope too. But I've always felt the X-Men are kind of out of place with the Marvel universe. I don't know, the whole mutant and superhero thing doesn't really mix well to me. And I will definitely be the first to admit that a lot of DC movies are pretty bad, and the universe they've tried to build is like an awful mess. But at least the DCEU has variety. It feels like each movie was created by a director with a vision, with the occasional studio interference, of course. But I'm getting way sidetracked. I'm dragging down this video. What I came here to talk about was WandaVision. WandaVision is Marvel's attempt at bringing their universe to TV. But Neil, what about all those Netflix shows? Shh. First off, expect some spoilers for this video because WandaVision is a very hard show to talk about without spoiling, and on top of that, pretty much everyone has spoiled the show for everyone else, so, you know, no going back at this point. This show takes place directly after Endgame. Not everything is explained right away, but the gist of it is that Wanda Maximoff and her husband Vision are now trapped in a sitcom. And the reason that's so peculiar is because Vision was killed by Thanos, but a lot of it is explained by episode 3 when the show starts to make a lot more sense. Now, since this is intended to be a fairly quick review, I won't waste time letting you know that the thing that bogs this whole show down is that WandaVision is a very messy show. It's got a very messy structure. Yet at the same time, being a mess doesn't make it bad. I actually welcomed that aspect of it. After years of so many Marvel movies playing it safe and feeling way too similar, it's nice to see Marvel taking more of a risk, I guess. There's a lot of good and bad that comes from that. The show is also unconventional in the sense that it's constantly flipping back and forth between the tone of the Marvel universe and the tone of the sitcom that Wanda and Vision star in. And it was really fun seeing these actors take on these characters in the form of various sitcoms throughout the years, ranging all the way from the 50s to 2010s. I absolutely loved the episode that was a homage to Malcolm in the Middle. And I loved all of the ads in each episode that kind of tied into Wanda's origin and other Marvel stuff. I also really loved the first 2 episodes where the mystery was like still a mystery. Nothing was made clear yet, and part of me kind of wishes the majority of the show was like that. But being a Marvel show, it's still trying to appeal to the sort of audience that likes that kind of thing. And the moment it starts to do that, I did lose a bit of interest for a while. It's not exactly the show I wanted. I had this show in my head that was more of like a horror thriller show, kind of something somewhat similar to Too Many Cooks, but with a more serious take. But I can't hold the show at fault for not being what I wanted it to be. I've heard many people say that too many people judge a movie or a show based on what they wish it were rather than what it is. And that is something that I agree with. And what it is at the end of the day is still a mostly enjoyable show. Obviously, it is a show all about sitcoms, which is all built up to this big reveal that Wanda grew up with sitcoms and used them to learn English. Now, I did feel that it was handled mostly well, and episode 8 is without a doubt my favorite episode of WandaVision, and the one that got the biggest emotional reaction out of me. But it is also a bit strange that this was something that had to be revealed to us as some sort of surprise, as opposed to just telling us this about Wanda's character earlier in the Marvel movies. For this reason, I think WandaVision would work a lot better on a rewatch, but it still feels like it's backwards in its execution. I think the best part of this was seeing a woman Marvel superhero get some sort of development. I felt like Wanda was finally a character. A big complaint I have about the MCU is that a lot of their women characters feel very underdeveloped. They're built up to be these like strong, tough heroes, but that's about it to them. I mean, I don't consider Black Widow or Captain Marvel to be that great of characters. I do like Gamora and Nebula though, but that's Guardians of the Galaxy. That's a whole nother ballpark. But one of my biggest questions was what the show was trying to say about sitcoms, and I feel like the show doesn't really delve into that. You could theorize what it means about the idealized fantasy world versus real life, but the show never really makes that clear connection. It's the same problem I have with a lot of Marvel stuff, where I watch it and I feel the same afterward. The movie just kind of like washes over you. But this wasn't just a Marvel movie, this was a Marvel TV show, and that makes it different. But did it really feel any different from the MCU movies? Yes and no. I will say that due to being a TV show, a lot of the emotional moments hit harder than a Marvel movie would have. But that's not really saying much, since Marvel movies are rarely emotional. They really are just fun popcorn movies, and believe me, that is not a criticism, that's perfectly fine. The VFX here were definitely not as impressive as in the movies, but they came damn close. I will say that the final fight looked really silly to me, but maybe that's just something you don't really think about when watching these movies in an IMAX theater. There was a lot of questions the show left me with, or things that should have been a big deal, but weren't. The reveal of Evan Peters as Quicksilver, we all thought meant something, but nope, it didn't. And I'm glad it didn't, because I did not want to see the introduction to X-Men in the Marvel Universe being the Fox X-Men crossing over. At this point, I just kind of want an X-Men reboot. Also, Paul Bettany hyped up a surprise cameo only for there to not be one, so I don't know what that was about. There's also a lot of side characters that feel like they're supposed to do something in the story, but then they just have nothing to do by the last episode. Monica Rambeau becomes Spectrum in an episode, which I have no idea who that is or what it entails. The problem is, I know it's a big deal if you've read the comics, but I've never read a Spectrum comic. I don't know who that is. It brings me to the point that a lot of times Marvel relies on you to have read the comics for a scene to mean something, and I feel that that shouldn't be the case, especially now since they're pulling the more obscure characters out of their vault. I feel like I'm supposed to applaud Marvel's decision to take a risk, but by this point it just feels long overdue. After Avengers 2 was when they should have started this change. I mean, they kinda did with movies like Thor Ragnarok, but those still felt pretty safe to me. Overall, I think that WandaVision was a fun watch. It just didn't blow me away or anything. It's watchable with an occasional clever or fun moment. And as the title of this video says, it's good, just not great, and I'm not trying to convince anyone that there's anything wrong with that. It's unique for Marvel, but still feels like yet another Marvel thing that I enjoy that I'll quickly forget anyway, and that's a real shame. It's like Disney just wasted their trump card. I'm not that interested in Falcon and Winter Soldier, but I'll probably give it a watch because I have Disney+. Loki looks fun though. I'm actually looking forward to that one. I can't wait to be disappointed. Thank you to everyone who watched. This ramble has gone on longer than I thought it would, so I'm going to end the video here. Goodbye.